those of you who are on Zoom, please make sure to include your first name and last name in your display so that we can identify you accordingly when we call on you later on. To open today's discussion, one more thing. Our event today will end at around 11:15, 11:30. We are going to serve an early light lunch for those of you in the room who would like to have lunch. Could I have a small indication of those who might be wanting to stay for lunch today? Please raise your hands. Thanks very much. If you change your mind later on and do want to stay for lunch and didn't raise your hand, we will have lunch for you anyway. To open today's discussion, I'd like to call on Jaime Augusto Sobel de Ayala, Chairman of Ayala Corp and Vice Chairman of Makati Business Club. Jaime.
Thanks very much, Coco. And on behalf of the Makati Business Club, thank you to everyone for joining us today. I think it's part of our lives now that we have these hybrid sessions. We're trying to slowly, I think Coco's slowly trying to get some live gatherings together. So to all of you who came today, thank you. But to all on the virtual front as well, welcome. I think it's a new reality for all of us that we will have these hybrid sessions more and more often in the corporate sector, or even on the personal side. Our special thanks as well to our speaker, Marco Guida. Thank you very much. And the True Digital Group. It's great that you guys have taken the time to share your thoughts with us. Certainly delighted to have True Digital as a partner in this event, and I think recently minted member of the Makati Business Club as well, your group. So that's fabulous. Thank you, and welcome to MBC as well. A quick background on True Digital. They're part of Thailand's CP Group, a group that actually we've respected greatly for many years. One of the leading business groups here in Asia, with many companies across the region. We were just discussing that they have a strong presence here in the Philippines, but as always, not so visible fabric of the Philippine environment for some time now. Going back to Thailand, of course, they play a critical role in the growth and development of Thailand's agricultural sector, which I guess all of us here in the Philippines have not eager to learn from. We hope that our dialogue today will be able to spark some new ideas and conversations as we try to navigate many of the global supply chain issues and the rise of inflation and interest rates, which I think we're quite familiar with. The troubles plaguing our agriculture sector have become a top of mind concern in recent days. It's discussed formally by our president, and it's issues of inflation and food prices in our country. These recent developments are manifestations of the persistent challenges that Philippine agriculture faces. Agriculture remains one of our slowest growing economic sectors, just 2% growth in the last quarter, but with among the highest poverty rates in terms of Filipinos. Important to the well-being, I guess, of our country. Philippine agricultural productivity is also one of the lowest in the region, still among the highest from an industry point of view. It's a little wonder why our farms earn and produce much less. Suffer from among the highest food prices in the region. For all of you, though we haven't been traveling lately, but Thailand is which makes this even more relevant to us today. In the area of supply, we also continue to fall short on the majority of our food requirements, with the Philippines having the largest food trade deficit to GDP in the region, just about 2%. Our food supply will allow us to make a tremendous impact to our inclusive growth ambitions as a country. We look to Thailand as an inspiration on how we might be able to hopefully address the many concerns that plague Philippine agriculture. Amidst Thailand's unique geographical advantages are its farmlands and river deltas. The Thais have also harnessed the power of technology to increase the efficiency of its farm yields and the equity within the different players in the sector. It is impressive that True Digital have begun to apply some of these digital solutions here in the Philippines, and we look forward, Marco, to hearing about that. True Digital has already introduced a platform that enables farmers to track and predict livestock weight, allowing them to adjust feeding and other factors, which helps in limiting wastage. Certainly, properly harnessing technology can bring our agricultural sector to the next level, making our farms more productive, more competitive, and more profitable, and ensure that every Filipino will have a nutritious food at their tables daily. We look forward to learning more from Thailand, from the CP Group, now a member, I guess, of the Makati Business Club, and of course, True Digital, as we move along our journey to return Philippine agriculture to the region-leading industry it once was many decades ago. I thank everyone for joining us here today. Coco, thank you for keeping momentum going for MBC in these other subcategories, agriculture being, something, very relevant to us here at this point in time. And that is like, it's very nice to have you here as well with the kind of work you're doing for the Department of Agriculture. So with that, I turn the floor over to Marco Guida, and maybe I could just pass it directly on to you. Thank you very much.
First of all, buongiorno, good morning to everyone. My name is Marco. I've been working for True Digital for 4 years, so pretty much since the founding of our digital group. Before going to the presentation, I will tell you a little bit about myself. So I think this will enhance some of the things that I said before. While now I am the Chief Business Officer for True Digital, actually, I started my career as a data scientist. So I didn't study business. And only when I joined McKinsey, I learned a little bit. But having this, let's say, technical background and this business background allow me to understand some of the struggles of, let's say, our technical team and why sometimes solutions that make sense on paper don't get implemented. So the first thing, does it work? Did it work in the background? Okay. First thing, I think we had a wonderful introduction of CP Group. For those of you that don't know, CP Group plays in a myriad of different sectors. Of course, agriculture is probably the main one. Food, retailers, like for example in Thailand, 7-Eleven, Lotus, Macro, but not just in Thailand. Of course, CP Group is also like the main investor to a telco company. This telco company is called True. It deals in things like fintech. True Money is our e-wallet's biggest e-wallet in Thailand. So really like diversified sector, and he has, I would say, like two kind of souls. On one time, I would say the classic souls is like agriculture, brick and mortar business, and on the other side, digital innovation that is applied in a myriad of sectors. Of course, CPF, I think CP Food is an integrated business across the whole value chain. So we do feeds, we do animals, we do food. The interesting thing, I would say, of course, is a business where Thailand is one of the key markets, but 2/3 of our production is outside Thailand. So I think while we do have a Thai soul, we also have an international overture. Then I think while I was preparing this presentation, one of the questions that I was asked was, why is CPF successful? No? And of course, we look outside in, we talk with our colleagues, and there are many reasons. But I would like to pick up one. And the one, it's not be afraid to do innovation. Like I think one of the things that struck me when I started working with them is the fact that they were willing to try solutions that I guess with my, let's say, digital mind, that I would say, oh no, like they would always be afraid to try something new. I think they understand that we can't keep doing things the same way they were done 20, 30 years ago, because to be honest, the things that were successful at that time, if you replicate it just like this, you cannot be competitive in the current world. So I think the push of innovation of all these reasons is probably one of the most important one. I think in the rest of my presentation, I will try to say what innovation means, because it's a big word and can mean many things. I will try to be more specific with the real examples. Then I should also mention something about my company inside CP. Like True is a telco player. It's the biggest broadband player in Thailand, the second biggest for SIM. 4 years ago, we built a new business. I think thanks to the vision of our chairman and CEO. We basically wanted to be the digital innovation hub for True and for the CP group, because telco, like agriculture, is going through an innovation phase where things that excited people like SIM and broadband don't really excite them anymore. So what is the next step also in our industry? And that's where True Digital plays. We do two main things in True Digital. Number one, we have a digital solution business where, and this is why in this vest I'm here today, where basically we apply IoT, advanced analytics, AI, cybersecurity to our business and other businesses. The second soul, I would say, is our digital media soul. Like there we have a digital platform called True ID, which it's reasonably big in Thailand. We have about 30 million users. We've launched it a bit more than a year ago around the region. Outside Thailand, we probably have about 6-7 million users at the moment. We're growing, of course. And the second part of our digital media is our creator, our influencer. I think not a lot of people know that True is actually the biggest influencer business in Thailand. And we have now launched our services also outside Thailand through a combination of build and buy. So agriculture 4.0, what does it mean? Now, there are lots of buzzwords, I would say, like, you have IoT, cloud services, artificial intelligence, or AI, or advanced analytics. And last but not least, robotics. I think all these solutions, if I look at a person that has sold them, applied them, see the results, have three things in common. And often people only think about the first two. So this is what I want to share today of my experience also working. So the first thing that a lot of people will tell you, of course, when it comes to IoT, smart agriculture, will tell you, you need the hardware. No, without the hardware, you cannot go anywhere. And of course, hardware is important, but it's only part of the solution. The second part, of course, it's another buzzword. You need the data. Data is the new oil. I remember my McKinsey colleague also pushing this. And this is also true, to be honest. It's particularly important that these data are correctly collected. They are at least on a quasi real-time basis, so you can take fast decision. But to be honest, this is only part of the solution. So the first part, and this is where I have to take, let's say, out my technical hat and put my business hat, is why are we doing this? No, because I have seen sometimes the hardware being applied on purpose of just doing the hardware and analytics. Oh, we just need to do analytics. Doesn't matter why. The first thing is the business reason. What are you trying to solve as a business leader? It doesn't matter, public sector, you're a farmer, you own some farms, like you're a big group, you need to decide what are we solving. And in this sector, I think the key things that you need to do is productivity. Like, can a combination of data, analytics, and hardware help you improve productivity? What is the business question that you're trying to solve? And this is harder than it looks. Then, if you ask this question correctly, hardware and analytics are not the only two parts of the equation. You need a third one, which is often undervalued because people focus a lot on these two. The third one is whatever solution you give, it needs to it needs to help you making decision. And this is the hardest of the three things, no? Because you can have a hardware that is perfect, never makes a mistake. You can have the latest machine learning algorithm that allows you to maximize the quality of your prediction and still make the wrong choice. Like this, and as I said, as a technical person, it pains to tell me this, but a data scientist often will not recognize a banana from a personal loan. Like, it's really important that when these solutions are deployed, there is someone who really understands the business and can point the objective in the right direction. And in the next few pages, I'm going to share a couple of examples of a business question asked right, and hence hardware and analytics put together to make sure we can maximize productivity. So the first thing is cow. Like the two business problem here. Like this is a real use case. The first one, it's how do I minimize attempt to reproduction? Because it's a huge wastage of people, time, like resources in general. And the second part is how can I correctly predict cow sickness? Because cows die, it's a huge issue because, you know, particularly if there is some sort of mistake spread around, it's really, really, really a big problem for things like milk production, for example. Now, the solution applied here is we need to understand two things. One, when the cow, I don't have any other way in English to say this, we need to predict this correctly so we can maximize the probability of mating. No, that's a business question. The second question is we need to understand how we can correctly predict the cow's temperature, because we can then understand the pattern and understand if the cow is sick or is not sick. This is exactly what it was done. What is the business impact? You know? Again, question asked right. The first impact was we basically use cow earing to correctly measure the temperature of the cow. Based on this temperature, we were able to analyze pattern. Okay, this is like, you know, fake alarm, or no, this is really a risk called the veterinary, something is going on. The second thing, of course, based on the temperature of the cow, you can also correctly understand if the cow is in it. So two business questions asked right. What is the business results? Like number one, let's say the attempts to make the cow pregnant were significantly reduced by almost 75%. I think it went from 8 times to 2 times. And the second part, it's reducing the death rate 0%. So that's really important. Like this is productivity, because suddenly a cow that was dead, it is not. You have not wasted your resources into call it veterinary. Like, of course, every time a cow dies, like all the production plan go up into the trash. So it's really, really important. It saves time, it improves productivity, it reduces cost. Second one, like this is, I remember when I presented to a different audience, have you ever tried to weigh a broiler or a chicken? It is very hard. And it's like close to a wrestling match than to a business operation. But it is a big problem, because particularly like these broilers, like 10, 20, 50, 100,000 of them. Now, like everybody loves chicken. And the issue is that if these chicken are not correctly weighted, production again goes into, I'm not going to swear because this is a very, very fine gentleman's club. So, but basically it's a huge problem in the production cycle. And, you know, the other issue was that because it's so difficult to weigh this chicken, that they will use samples. Like, you know, they will take 20 chicken from one part, 50, they will wait for them. And then they assume that all the other chicken weigh that way. Unfortunately, it doesn't work this way in real life. And it's a big problem. So then business question asked right. It's how do I weight my chicken correctly? So then I can maximize production. I can understand if they are eating correctly, because if suddenly, you know, they're supposed to weigh 7.5 kilos and they weigh 2.5, that's a big problem. And you can focus, because you're not talking about average. You're talking, okay, chicken A, chicken B, chicken C are fine. chicken D, chicken F, chicken J are not fine, and that's where called the veterinary understand what they're eating. Perhaps we didn't supply them the right feeds. So then, what we use to weigh the chicken correctly is a camera. And I say, how do you weigh the chicken on a camera? Actually, you can. This is, on a similar technology that is used for things like face recognition. Use them on broilers, and you can correctly understand. Of course, nothing is perfect in life, but with a much greater degree of confidence, how much do they weigh? If you understand how they weigh, you understand where your problem lies, because again, you're not talking about average, you're talking about specific area where your chicken are and specific chicken. So you can really understand where if there is a problem, first of all, and two, how to operate it. So again, giving clear insight and not just doing, we're doing a facial recognition model for the chicken, so we minimize the, no, like we'll tell you where the problem is, which I think it's something that sometimes as a digital expert and technical people, we forget for the sake of having the perfect model. So this, I think, Diki told me I'm not allowed to name names, but I will basically say this is, we haven't just done it in Thailand, no? Like this is something we have actually applied, we are applying, because this is a current work currently going on in the Philippines, where we actually already done several cycles where we weighted roughly 380,000 chickens. I remember when I presented the first time was 150. We've improved. But I think, what are the results now of weighting this chicken correctly? I think that's what you're all here to hear. Number one, it's you reduce human intervention, because you know exactly how they weight. Like it reduces the fact, okay, I need to do a lot of manual check-in. So you reduce basically the human intervention by 2/3. These 2/3 of the farmer can do something else, probably more productive, or at least bigger than zero, which is still an increase in productivity. Number two, it's you can optimize schedules. Again, this is, there is always a perfect plan on a PowerPoint slide or an Excel file, but when if you don't exactly understand what issues your broilers have, like this typically cycle have delay. If they have delay, there is a whole lot of snowball effect that even reduce further productivity. But basically, we're able to optimize the schedule based on that. And last but not least, if you're able to optimize the schedule, if you're able to know how much they really weigh, you can optimize your supply chain, because of course, like it's easier to move things around when you know exactly what is going on, what weights you're trying to move, etc., etc. So again, like in the example of cow, business question: can I weight my chicken correctly? Solution: yes, you can. You need 3 things. Number one, you need hardware, no? Because you need a smart camera. Number two, you need analytics, because you need basically combination of smart camera and analytics. You can weigh this chicken correctly. Number three, you need I call it real life suggestion, not real testing. It's like, what is that you need to do? No, like it's again, it's not about maximizing the power of the algorithm. It's about maximizing the power of the decision. So, okay, explain it simply. How many chicken, how much they weigh, what's the difference, what's the area you need to worry about. That's it. Like one of the challenges I think in this sector is to make complex algorithms simply. And to do that, to be honest, you need local knowledge. So you need business knowledge. So you need somebody who's able to talk to a farmer. You need somebody that really understands the business. Then you need the digital expert, and then you need the analytics expert. Like the combination of this, if you miss one of these 4, recipe for a disaster. That's So what's the role of true digital in this? No, like I think on one side, as let's say innovation center for True Group and for CP in a larger way, we do have our own product. We do have people that are business experts and know how to talk in the media space with the media people, in the solution space, in this case of agriculture with farmers. But we also understand that digital is so variegated and so vast. We don't have all the solution. So we do partners, and I think today we have our Cropin friends. So perfect, perfect example. But we do understand that sometimes we don't have all the answers. And I think in the end, we want to be on the hook for the business solution. No, if somebody can do something better than us, no problem. Like, I think it's, I've learned this the hard way. Like when I started my journey, I thought, oh, we should never partner with anyone. Like, no, if you're trying to solve a business problem, you need to listen, you need to partner, and then you can offer your clients, your partners, like the best possible solution. I think our angle being, let's say, a regional player, and I know this firsthand as a European came to Southeast Asia, is not always easy for American company and European company that sometimes has world-class solution to come in Southeast Asia. Because again, they will struggle to talk to the farmers, to the, and I think in this, we also play a big role because of course, being part of CP Group, let's say we have privileged access and we have eaten our own food. I would say that so that we also, I think, is a big characteristic of working together with us. Last but not least, because I also know I'm about 9 minutes in. The last slide, I think, the last slide is, oh, powerful voice. The last slide, it's about true digital for a second. Now, like I spoke about that we have digital media, digital solution, but I didn't say, where are we? No? And I think this is important for our digital solution. Of course, our headquarters are in Thailand and our biggest market is Thailand. But I think given the technology investment that we have made, we felt that is the right thing to go and expand regionally. Like we are, of course, we launched Philippines, but actually we are present in Malaysia, Indonesia, in Cambodia, in China, like 7 countries to be exact. I think you can all read the slides. I will not quote them all, but I think it's on our digital solution, we're starting having history of helping clients, again, not just in Thailand, but also in other parts of the region, because we believe we have learned working in Thailand some of the best practice, not all of them. Of course, some of this will have to be localized because the needs of agriculture in Philippines might be different than the one in Thailand. And the challenge might also be slightly different, as part of the conversation we had earlier. But we do believe that given our know-how, we can provide our partners with advantages that perhaps they didn't know they could have. So that would be it. I want to thank you, everyone.
While Shula is looking for the ito. Maybe while Shula is looking for it.
Is there a question? So thank you so much for listening to me. If you have questions, feel free to ask during our discussion, but also later on. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Marco, for that presentation. Marco's joining me here. Could I also invite Mr. Dennis Layug to join us here? Dennis is the Director for ICT at the Department of Agriculture. Dennis, thanks for joining us. Also joining us, I believe, online is Sujit Janardanan, who is Chief Marketing Officer of Cropin, who I think is joining us via Zoom. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Morning, everyone.
Hi, good morning. I'm waiting to see your video, actually. Sujit, you're joining us from where?
I'm joining you from Bangalore, India right now.
Okay, good morning. Sujit is with Cropin. Cropin is a global ag ecosystem intelligence provider, which helps organizations digitize their operations from farms to leverage near real-time farm data and actionable insights to make effective decisions. The True Digital Group and Cropin have partnered to formulate digital strategies to help improve the Philippine agri sector and empower agribusinesses and farmers in the country through innovative and sustainable solutions. So again, Marco, Dennis, and Sujit, thanks very much for this, for joining us for this discussion. We'll have a discussion here for about 10 or 15 minutes. Then we'll open it up to questions from the audience, both here on the floor and those who are joining us on Zoom. Maybe I'll start with Marco. When we look at the members of our board, really, including Jaime and our chairman, Ed, and the other members that I introduced earlier, are really concerned about Philippine Agri. As Jaime described, it is one of the slowest growing sectors. Many of our poor are there, and it has a big impact on the economy in general. In terms of transforming an agriculture system from maybe where we are now, I know you've only been through digital for 4 years, and were all of those 4 years in Thailand?
So first 3 years in Thailand, and since the last year I took over the role of Chief International Officer. So I've been working with the likes of Dindo and Diki to grow our international business. So bit of both.
So from what you've learned and seen while stationed in Thailand, what do you think was critical in terms of transforming the agriculture sector there to the very advanced and productive sector that they have now?
So to me, probably 3 things. And it's a combination. Difficult to say which one was the most important, but they're all 3 very important in my opinion. Number 1, there needs to be the people that are in charge of the company, like being CP, CPF, need to be willing. And if I look at our leadership, chairman of CP, vice chairman of CP, all of them really had a big digital agenda. Say, we don't like the status quo, we need to transform it. And this, of course, percolated across all the leadership team, including me, so pushing us to do our best and not be afraid of trying to solution. That's the first part. The second part would be having vision and patience. What do I mean by that? The reality when it comes to digital, you don't need to be afraid to fail. Like, I think this is a big shift from the past, no? Like I've been working for like 17, 18 years, and only in the last 5 or 6, I've seen this kind of mindset shift. When I started working, I was afraid to fail. Like, if my work wasn't perfect, my spreadsheet weren't perfect, my project weren't perfect, I couldn't sleep. When it comes to the digital, you need to do test and learn. You try things, it doesn't work, you move on. You need to be fast though. And so that's the other part. So I think this together, of course, recruiting the people with the right skill is the second characteristic. Mindset shift, very tough. Number 3, I do think, and this is the next, I'm not a government expert, but I have seen that our local government is willing to support. Like, I think probably the combination of these 3 things, it's the one that generates things like improving productivity, at least as an external observer and a guest. I would say that that's probably the combination of the 3 things.
Thanks. I like vision and patience the most of those 3.
You do need all 3, to be honest, but I do think the biggest mindset shift, in my experience, the most difficult things you can do is accept the thing that made you successful for many, many years might not work anymore.
Thanks.
It is a big challenge.
Thanks very much. Dennis, when you look at the Philippine agri sector, what role? I mean, it has many issues and problems. Technology is a lack of technology, or the state of technology maybe is one of them. But how big a role would that play in turning around Philippine agri?
Well, I think digitalization is really a vital part. I remember a few years ago when I attended this convention in the United Nations. That was like 2016. They mentioned that the biggest problem of the world by year 2050 is how to feed 10 billion people. And technology has to introduce for a more sustainable agriculture. Like in the Philippines, we all know that we encounter a lot of these challenges like climate change and ASF and bird flu. And I think that will be addressed also if you use technologies like the use of satellite, the use of IoT devices, the use of 3D printing machines, even the use of blockchain and so on and so forth. So I am very hopeful because we have already started digitalizing the Department of Agriculture. And we started doing that. I'll be honest with you, we started doing that 2 years ago. One of the major concerns is actually the database or the listing of our farmers and fisher folks. Because if we want to attain food security in the Philippines, we need a government to provide interventions on a regular basis. As of the moment, I think that is very, very important. So we need to make sure that the farmers and the fisher folks in our listing are all legitimate. If we can provide immediate interventions to all our farmers and fishers, then we now increase our yield. The president mentioned that he will be focusing on food production. And along the line, of course, digitalization is very important. If we can digitalize from seed to table, then I think the growth will be more than 2%. But we need to work and collaborate with the private sector. Because if you introduce technologies to ordinary farmers, you will have a problem. Just like what Marco mentioned a while ago, you need to have business sense. You need to have the technical know-how. But that is another discussion by itself because providing these skills, exponential skills to the farmers are quite challenging. It starts from the educational system, right? We are talking about all, industry 4.0, education 4.0, agriculture 4.0. But if you notice, if you check the curricula of the different colleges and universities, that is where we are lagging behind. Recently I came from the US. University of Alabama in Birmingham. And when I entered the engineering department, there were a lot of agricultural raw materials. It's actually abaca that they have there. And they are creating bulletproof vests using 3D printing machines. You can just imagine, these kinds of technologies that we lack. So digitalization will play a very, very important role to attain food security. Monitoring all the supply as well. Remember, this is like the hot item right now. We don't know, we don't have the data. That's what.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Do we need to change Dennis's mic?
Oh, thank you. So we need to have the data, and we need somebody, or we need people to interpret the data as well. But we don't have data science course in the Philippines.
Thanks. So you
Yeah.
started out with talking about the database that the government would have. So that's on the government side. Could I turn to Sujit? Sujit, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Um,
can.
Could you tell us about some of the technology that you have tried to introduce in the Philippines and elsewhere that maybe are closer to the hands of the farmers themselves, that they could use even absent the national database, if that's not present yet, that farmers could use immediately if they're ready for it already, Sujit?
I sure can. Thank you everyone for this opportunity and for bearing with me while I'm virtual. I would have loved to be in person, but thank you for that, Coco. Like Marco was saying today, technology definitely exists. And I think the biggest acceleration that we've seen is a bunch of technologies really coming together to enable and solve real problems on ground. But the challenge really is, are we able to digitally empower every single stakeholder in the entire agriculture value chain? And that starts from the ordinary farmer, and that is important. And the basic fundamental building block in this whole process is really digitization. And digitizing what happens on the farm, enabling access to digital technologies to the farmer, which is easy to use and understand and consume, and every other stakeholder up the value chain, right up to providers of services, products or inputs, etc., to the government, everyone. And I think so today, right from the building block of digitization to the next layer of being able to enable access to data, how you can democratize access to data, that is available. And more importantly is the next layer, which is the predictive layer. Now, if we don't build all of these spaces block by block, we will not be able to solve the real big problems that agriculture is facing today. I'll give you an example. Right in Philippines, the province of Bataan is actually working with Agri, which is an Israeli consulting firm and primarily a technology consulting firm, where we are collaborating with them to enable an ecosystem where farmers are being enabled to identify opportunities to grow produce during, for example, the summer season. Which typically is a low produce season for them, but helping them implement irrigation systems, being able to track yield and harvest, bringing in financial enabler players so that they can drive access to finance for those farmers, etc. That is being enabled. So that's one example. Another example is where we're working with private players like Unilever, who are trying to enable coconut farmers in Indonesia by helping them digitize, not just get access to new kinds of seeds, etc., to grow different kinds of coconut trees that help them get better yield, but also be able to monitor the yield, etc., help them get better value for their produce. So basic fundamental building block has to be digitization, where we can build more visibility for every single stakeholder and player in this particular ecosystem and value chain.
Thanks, Sujit. Marco, you told us when you were talking about the chickens earlier that Dicky said you couldn't identify who those were. Could you tell us a little bit about how the acceptance or receptivity was when this was introduced to farmers?
So I think for me there are three factors that you kind of need to hit. So the first one is how do you build the trust in the solution? No? Like if the solution is too complex and I'm not able to explain it in human terms to them, that's not the right solution. Because the most important thing is once you leave, what happens? Like, is it going to be used? So that's number one. You need to have somebody who speaks the same language. Number two is to build trust, and you need to be able to show results. No, and I found that quite important at the start, of course, before the solution gets deployed. The ability, for example, to tap into people and say, we've done this, and this is what we face, no? Like, and say, look, it's not going to be all roses and flowers, but at the end of this journey, you're going to have a tangible advantage. The third part is after the proof of concept, like there needs to be a tangible business results. So what has been our, we have all this fancy term, okay, KPI. What was our objective? Was it to reduce mortality? Has mortality been reduced, yes or no? If you're able to hit these three things, then you're able to build trust into the farm. Because at the end, I think farmers are very practical. If you're able to solve them a problem, then after the journey, they will say, why not? And they will keep using it.
Then it's how ready are Philippine farmers for technology?
That's a very good question. We've tried to launch some applications that they can use to be able to sell their products, so that we can monitor also their harvests. But unfortunately, it's not being used regularly. One is because we have challenges when it comes to internet connectivity. The other one is, the farmers, they keep on changing cell phones and SIM cards, so we lose track of them. But I think it's going to be, very, very possible, especially when you provide. Right now, what we are doing is we automated the distribution of our interventions. That one they use because they know that they will be getting something from the government. Now we have this digital ID with QR code. If you present that, you can get your free fertilizer, your fuel subsidy, and all.
Are they responding to that?
They are responding to that because there is an immediate intervention that they can get. But the likes of, let's say, an application that will detect pests and diseases, all these things, still, the adoption is not that high. I guess because there are also some farmers with challenges when it comes to the mobile phones that they're using, because these are old mobile phones. So there are a lot of challenges on the ground that we would love to address, of course, as Department of Agriculture. And by the way, the other thing is we need to automate our internal processes. We have 45 attached bureaus and agencies under the Department of Agriculture, and having one database is quite a big challenge on our part. But yeah, I'm very impressed with CP. I've met the CP officials a long time ago. And in fact, I know a lot of private sectors who would like to collaborate. They're looking for opportunities when it comes to, because they like the technology to address ASF. They want to put up CP farms in islands, right? With high-tech biosecurity measures from CP. But I guess it's more on the financing side that is a big challenge. But together with the whole group, maybe there's a possibility. Aboitiz is going to support. I just had a meeting with them yesterday, and they are all out support. They will be coming up from seed to table technology related to new technologies and exponential technologies. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Sujit, one last question for you, from me at least. What can the Philippines learn in terms of getting farmers to adapt technology that you've seen in India and elsewhere?
So a few of the learnings is a very tight and strong public-private partnership, and that is important for succeeding or ensuring there is a successful, sustainable, robust agriculture ecosystem that's built in countries. And when I look at countries like India, the model, and even Africa for that matter, is being this model of ensuring that we enable the local communities to be able to empower themselves with technology. And I think that's where the model of having government, which provides a framework, which could be an incentive framework, a program framework, access to digital technology framework, then actually supported by local village-based advisors who are empowered, trained to be able to adopt those technologies so that they understand how those technologies can be further enabled or provided to the end farmer who may not have access to the best devices. Maybe they don't have access to smartphones, but you know what, they may still have access to a basic phone, and SMS is still an option that can be used for communicating with them. But the village-based advisors have access to the right devices, which is again enabled to this private and public partnership. That's been a great scalable model. And then building the what we call as the incentive framework, and that is important. And that's primarily in terms of access to finance. A great example in India is the whole MNCFC program, which is referred to as the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, where insurance risk cover is being provided to farmers via the government. But private insurance players have been invited into the program. There is a framework of how that whole program runs, including how risk is estimated, how premiums are calculated, and finally how whenever there is a submission for claim, how does that whole process runs. And in this whole process, technology is a key enabler. So, for example, it runs on the Cropin platform, and it runs at scale in a country like India. So, like I mentioned, I think technology is there. Thinking of digital empowerment across the entire value chain, starting from the farmer, is critical. Strong public and private partnership via a program framework is super critical, and that's how you enable success for the long term. But the one key summary point that I want to leave behind is we can't keep on providing incentives to the marginalized farmer as in year on year. We need to figure out a way for them to become self-sustainable. And the only way to do that is that you enable access to all the resources available, the tech, the finance, the program framework, access to market, supply chain support. So how do we reduce the burden of the farmer? Because in this whole agriculture value chain, the one stakeholder who's the least incentivized and with the least resources is the farmer. And we can't expect the farmer to be making this investment. So we as an ecosystem have to figure out how do we enable the farmer to get better.
Thanks, Sujit. My colleague Adrian has a couple of questions from our attendees on Zoom, and anyone here in the audience who has a question, please raise your hand, or you can line up after Adrian to ask your question. Go ahead, Adrian.
So I have one question from Mr. Felix from Farmhand. When is the best time to implement digital solutions for farms? What are the good indicators to know whether the solution that is needed is to improve basic agricultural protocols, or does it require digital solutions?
Marco, this might be related to your question about asking the right questions.
That's absolutely. I think there are two things that you, as a person in charge, have to ask ourselves now. The best time for me is to have two things. Number one, do you know what solution to what questions you need to ask? No, what problem you're trying to solve? That's the first thing, because I think implementing thing for the sake of implementing thing, never a good practice. Now people will drop it somewhere along the way. So first, what is that you're trying to solve? Chicken. I want to lower chicken mortality. I have to improve my supply chain cost by 10%. This can be almost any question. The second one, it's because, and I think exactly as my colleague said just before, it's there needs to be a certain level of top-down push. Like I think because the people that implement the solution does not have to be afraid of failing, because if not, the fear will paralyze him. It will go back to what he knows, and then the solution will not be correctly implemented. So number one, know what question to ask. Number two, have the stakeholder, the senior stakeholder, saying it is okay, you can try. Like this is, if you succeed, great. If you don't succeed, we'll learn and we will do something else. I think those two characteristics are key to decide what is the right time. If you don't have these two things, it's going to be very, very hard.
How big a factor is the size or the profitability of the farm, and maybe the skill or the educational attainment of the farmers?
I think that it would really, it's difficult to have a universal rule. My suggestion would always be start small, like have a POC. Like, even if you have a gazillion acres in your farm, it doesn't need to be deployed everywhere. Start with one part, see if it's solved. So also this will lower significantly the value at risk. Then once you have found what works, you can then extend it. And then of course, like the bigger the bigger the pie, the bigger the impact. But I would always recommend do a POC big enough to show that if it works or if it doesn't work. And then once you've proven that this works, then there is the extension phase.
Thanks very much. Adrian, do you have one more? Could I check if there's just one more question from Zoom? Anybody in the room who might have a question? Please raise your hand and we'll go to you. Otherwise, go ahead, Adrian. Sorry, is there one here? Yes, please. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you're asking the question from.
All right. Good morning. I am Erwin Belen. I am the Product Development Manager of Ada Manufacturing Corporation. A little background about our company. So we are the national dealer of Yanmar machineries for agriculture. So all the tractors, transplanters, and also harvesters. But I'm putting another hat. I am the chapter president of the Philippine Association of Agriculturists, NCR chapter. And my question is more on how can we equip those intermediaries? Because the technology is there, but somebody should be the one teaching the farmers on how to use the technology. So my question is, how can we equip those extensionists, agricultural extensionists, or the ones who are bringing the technology to the farmers, and what are the key aspects that we should consider on equipping this people, this workforce, to help our farmers?
Thanks very much. Maybe I'll turn to Dennis.
Yeah. Hi, Erwin. Erwin is also my my colleague in PAA. To answer your question, there has to be collaboration between the Department of Agriculture. We have ATI, Agricultural Training Institute, and the private sector, who is actually providing the technology. I think if we can collaborate, we can come up with programs to be able to bring that down to the ground, to the farmers, so that we can start training the farmers. It's really very important, really, to partner with the private sector, because as Department of Agriculture, of course, we need as much help as we can. We need resources. We need expertise, especially when it comes to technology. We need expertise from the private sector to be able to do that. Like for example, in other countries, they already have their tractors as RFID. You will be able to determine where the tractors are. The performance of the machineries and stuff like those. Another one is, the harvesters, the pickers, the unmanned harvesters. There are a lot of new technologies out there that I think we need to introduce to the Philippine market to lower down the cost of production. For example, another good technology, right? Solving the problem. That's correct. Like what Marco said, you have to identify the problem first. Like for example, in Metro Manila, the cost of vegetables here are very expensive because it comes from north and far south, right? And logistics, delivery, and by the time it reaches here, 40% are already spoiled. So it increases the price, right? And there are a lot of middlemen. But if you put up farms here, just like the ones that we see in Israel, the ones that we see in Netherlands, right? In the heart of the city, you can grow fruits, vegetables, and fish, using technology. That will lower down the cost of the agriculture commodities in Metro Manila, because we have at a given time 12 to 15 million people in Metro Manila. So yes, we need to collaborate further and teach farmers or even ordinary people. I mean, I'm not an agriculturist, but I had to learn it on my own, right? I mean, I think a lot of us here are not graduates of agriculture, but definitely we are interested,
Thanks very much. Is there any more question from the audience here before we go to the last question from Zoom? Yes, please.
Hi, sir. Good morning. So I'm Bianca. So I'm wearing two hats. One is with Bibida Philippines. So we are working with the 5th class municipality of Balete, Batangas, with the beekeeping industry. And then the other one is with Hardin ng Pagbabago. So we are located in Siargao Island, has been recently hit by the Typhoon Odette. So here's my question. So how do we empower farmer communities to explore digitalization, especially coming from 5th class municipalities, which are still recovering from the devastating impacts of disasters, such as, for example, our first community beekeeping industry was recently been hit by the Taal eruption. And then the other one is with the Siargao community, specifically in the Burgos municipality, which has recently been hit by also with the Typhoon Odette. That's pretty much it. And how soon can digitalization start po? After being impacted by these disasters. And so basically more on the preparedness and the disaster recovery as well, because right now we have recently been in Batangas. Their worry is the Taal volcano still has ongoing activity, so they haven't recovered from the 2020 eruption, and now they are worrying that from the 200 beehives they've had pre-eruption, now it's down to 20. They might not have anything at all when the next eruption comes in. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Could I turn first to Sujit? Sujit, from your experience, have you had to apply technology to an area or to farms that have been recently hit or recently hit by natural disasters?
Not a live case, but the way, and I'll give you probably a connected example, right, is a classic example of deforestation. Deforestation is a very real problem because agriculture does contribute to deforestation as farmers try and keep on finding better farmlands that can probably yield them better yields, considering that soil obviously keeps on getting degraded. But if you have deployed technologies to map a particular region or farmlands, etc., it does give you the ability to understand what's going on ground without having to even have human intervention. That's where technologies like remote sensing come to play, and then combined with cloud and artificial intelligence and machine learning, it helps you predict what's coming, and plus if something comes, what could be done to probably solve for it. It helps you monitor. I think everything in terms of action or business decisions starts from Are you able to measure something? Are you able to monitor something? And I think that's what's possible today with digital technologies. And then what's the best interventions available by bringing in the right experts who get access to that data to be able to make the right decisions and then pass on those decisions or actions down to the grassroots level, in this case, farmers, etc., is the right way to approach it. But I think what technology really solves is the scalability of these possibilities. I don't have a live example of a disaster hit region and what follows after that.
Thanks, Sujit. Dennis, you've obviously seen Philippine farmers affected by disasters. How do you bring technology into that scenario?
Okay. We are currently developing right now a mobile application wherein they can communicate directly, just send a message, and we will get that in the central office so that, they can take a picture of the damages of the typhoon and you can send it immediately so that, we can attend to that concern. Farm or area. And we are also using satellite technology as well already. I heard that during our meetings with the Philippine Space Agency, I had several meetings with them. We will soon be launching our own satellites that will be able to, to address these concerns as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Maybe next year that will be up and running already. So, just to add, we need IoT devices, like for volcanic eruption. We can determine the condition of the soil right after an eruption, right? So we can use IoT devices to be able to determine if we can still plant or whatever we can grow there in that particular area.
Thanks very much. We have two more questions from Zoom. Adrian, maybe since we're running out of time, could you ask them quickly, and then we'll direct them to Mark or the others.
Okay, so this is from Corby Dimalanta of the Sun Business Network. From my previous experience working with farmers, I believe financing and insurance are some of the gaps which leads to inefficiency in the agri value chain. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Sujit's sentiment in terms of digitalization of farm operations. My question is, from a business model standpoint, how do we implement an affordable solution for Filipino smallholder farmers such that data can be used by private banks and insurance companies for loans and investment in local agriculture?
Is there one more question?
It's more specific in terms of, I'll combine Mr. Har Banzon's question from Pueblo de Panay and Mr. Erwin Ejorango from Alcantara Group, which asks, do you have specific digital solutions for crops such as pineapple and banana, and also feed crops such as corn and soy?
Pineapple, banana, corn.
Yeah.
Maybe the first one goes to Marco and Sujit in terms of systems that can gather financial data that might be helpful, I guess, for lending purposes later on. Do you have things like that in your toolkit?
So at the moment, this is something that I'm glad they asked the question, because this is something we are at the moment looking into. We don't have yet like a well-defined 10-point plan, but I do agree with with two things. One is the financing, because some of the solution can be might be capital intensive at the start, if you want to deploy it. And of course, it's often a triage between the loan provider, the solution provider, and the farmer / group that manages the farm. So that's one part. And then there's the second part that it's about, can we use some of this data to provide, for example, more accuracy for things such as SME loan application. Let me answer first to the second point. The second point, this will vary country by country because it's tied to the data legislation in the country. There are things that you can do in Vietnam that you cannot do in Thailand, and vice versa. So there is one part, it would be, because of course you will use, these are probably not classified as PII, personal information, but they might be considered sensible data by the local legislation. But still doable, I would say. The second part, you need to be having a willing partner on the financial side. Now, because I have to say that typically financial provider in general, both on the fintech side and on traditional bank, they would be willing, like they always look a new way of doing more accurate credit scoring. Now, because I think that is a benefit for the loan requester and for the loan provider, both sides. Now, it lowers the COR for the borrower, and of course, it also often lowers the investment rate. So there is an opportunity, but then you need to be having a willing financial.
Thanks very much. Sujit, do you have any experience or any
Yes,
to address this question?
Yeah, I could add a bit to that, and I think India is a great case study of that one. So first, I will start with just the framework. I think it's not just the agriculture department or government's role here. There is obviously private players, which is banks, insurance companies, etc. And then what we call as the new age technology enablers like fintech, agtech, all of them. So I think it's a combination of all of these that come together. So for example, and I'll start with the government part. What we clearly seeing in India is the Reserve Bank of India, which is the central bank, clearly driving the mandate and policy that banks have to lend more in priority sectors. In fact, they're actually drilling it down to the level that there are districts that are underserved. There is not enough access to credit in those districts, which is largely districts that are run by agroeconomy. And banks are being forced to figure out ways and means to enable access to credit in those districts. So there is a policy change, there is a mandate, as a result of which players like banks, insurance companies are trying ways and means to ensure that they can lend, but at the same time manage their NPAs or risk better. And I think that's where comes the role of technology. And there are pieces, again, in the technology piece that have to be enabled by bodies like the government and then work with private players. But that's where things like, can I create a profile of a farmer? Can I create a profile of a farmland? Can I ensure that I have digital IDs where a farm plot is linked to a farmer and I have access to the historic data of what's happened on that farm, how well the farmer managed in the past in terms of being able to produce the right amount of yield, the quality of yield, their ability to actually monetize it by getting access to market pieces, etc. And then obviously banks and insurance companies over a period of time will build the financial profile. One key enabler in this that we've seen as a bottleneck when we look at India specifically is being what we call as the land digitization or land record digitization. Building cadastral maps at scale for farmlands in the country and then mapping it to digital IDs of farmers. That's been one of the areas that we're still trying to solve by working with the government. But I think all these building blocks, when you plug them together, is suddenly you have a robust solution that can sustain. But very, very doable. I think it starts with policy. It comes with enablement and bringing all the right players to come together.
That is.
Yeah. I've encountered this group called LTID. They are being supported by JICA. What they do is they provide immediate loans to farmers, 1 day processing, up to $500,000. The good thing about that is they use an application. And after that, LTID will also help in producing the crops. Not only that, and they help sell the crops so that the farmers can pay them. Another one, maybe I think we need to revisit Agri law. That is very, very important because as we all know, a lot of banks are very hesitant in, providing loans to farmers because of the repayment. And the other one, maybe we can ask the likes of GCash, you 1 day loan application, because we noticed that a lot of farmers have GCash. So if you can have like 5,000 or 8,000 or 10,000 loan immediately, the following day they get the loan so that they can buy fertilizers or seeds. I think that will help us strengthen food production as well. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm going to leave the last question about specific applications for pineapple, corn, and I think feed. We'll get those answers to you very quickly. I'm going to ask a final question of Marco. Before I do that, could I ask all of our attendees, both here and on Zoom, if you could give us your feedback? If you're here in the room, there's a QR code in front of you. You can aim your phone at that, and there's a feedback form there. If you're on Zoom, we're going to be sharing a QR code with you or a link, and we really appreciate your comments on that. please take note that we may use your comments in our publications. While everyone's answering that rather, I'd like to ask Marco a final question. Marco, from your experience at True Digital and your stay in Bangkok so far, what do you think is the biggest lesson that the Philippines can learn from the experience you've seen there so far?
I think on the cost of repeating myself, but like I think my learning of working 4 years for a digital company in Southeast Asia is been run fast, fail fast, learn fast, like literally. And this, I think it's for me, it was a bit of adjustment given the previous company I was working for. But this for me has been the biggest lesson, that you don't have to have everything figured out before launching something. The only thing that you need to make sure that happens is that you can learn, no matter, and then you can quickly iterate. Because in digital, the MVP is never the final product. Not like it's, you launch something, it works 60-70% of what is supposed to work, but then you have learned something important, you learn also what doesn't work, and you iterate. I think this is valid also. What I found shocking is this is valid both in the consumer sector and in the enterprise sector, because it's exactly the same learning for our digital solution and our digital media. Now we launch digital media, we launch a new feature, nobody likes it, let's move on, let's try something else. We understood why they didn't like it, and suddenly, oh, this works now. Same thing when it comes to our digital solution, like when we're trying and now I'm going to launch something maybe outside when we're trying to do analytics to, for example, improve credit scoring on the consumer side. Like at the start, but our model was definitely not perfect. No, like but then we iterate, include new information, understand what the needs of the consumer were, of the banks were, and I think now we have much more solid solution. So I think number one learning that I've had here, it's launch fast, test fast, fail fast, and iterate. That's it basically.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marco. Thank you very much to Sujit and to Dennis, and of course, to True Digital Group for our partnership today. Thanks everybody for attending here in the hotel and also for attending on Zoom. Before we go, could we take a photo first of the people on Zoom, if you're willing to turn on your cameras, and I'll count 1 to 3. We'll take a photo of you smiling back at us here. If you're willing to turn on your cameras, we'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to count 1 to 3, maybe 2 or 3 times, and I'd ask all of you to smile at the camera, please. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And 1, 2, and 3. Thanks very much for joining us on Zoom. For those of us here in the hotel, could I ask everyone to stand and just come here to the center? A photographer will be in front and take our photo from the front of the room. Thank you, everybody. We hope to see you again soon. For those in the room who are staying for lunch, there's a table at the back where we're going to be serving lunch. If you didn't raise your hand,